Welcome to Helen and Tony's Dive into the Mind. This week we are talking about the concept of expansion. It has many definitions and sort of extrapolations in the practicality of life. There's the metaphysical side, the expansion of our knowledge, our being, our opening our heart and understanding to other people and their ways. And today we're going to jump into how we can come back to practices, concepts, thoughts, behaviors, all different ways to expand our container. Welcome, Helen. It's great to see you.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, I'm really excited for today's talk. And I'm really excited to provide people with a different language so they can understand what expansion is.
Yeah. Yes, I think, kind of looking at it again, all the things that we do talk about, and we cover this in today's talk, but there's so many words that sort of can be maybe a barrier to entry for some people, like I'm not spiritual, or I'm not, I don't know what metaphysical means. I think at the end of the day, it's really all the same stuff with just sort of different labels. And our job, I feel like in these talks, is to kind of break down all of that to sort of make it approachable, understandable, and digestible, of just sort of what, like, really practical, really
I think the practical component of how we've applied it in certain examples, I think that's definitely, I think there are some great examples in today's session.
yeah, we definitely go on to a lot of different things. Anyway, without further ado, let's go across to the episode, today's interview. And thank you so much for coming. And Helen, I love you, and thank you for being with me today.
Thank you. Love you too. Bye. Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Bye. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Tony and Helen's Dive into the Mind. This week, I'm very excited to be talking about the topic of expansion. It has many, many kind of applications, understandings, and Helen and I are super excited to jump into this together. She'll be joining us slightly. And yeah, I'm excited. What's been happening? How are you all feeling? It's been a big year. How did you feel with the eclipse on Monday? We had a new moon in Sagittarius and a solar eclipse, which was pretty interesting. I think that it's been bringing for me feelings of release. Hi, Helen. How are you? Here she is. I was just talking about
Hello.
new moon in Sagittarius and the solar eclipse being a Sag. How's it been feeling for you? Jumping straight in. Welcome.
Yeah, it's definitely Sag season. So my birthday was last week, and I am feeling pretty pumped, actually. I feel like there's literally been a lot of change. I find that sometimes in my life, and especially in my career, it just kind of feels like there's this really hard slog, and then all of a sudden it just turns around in an instant, and I kind of get that feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah,
And
that's
for
how I
you?
was. Yeah, explaining actually that I feel a bit of a release. While I think there's still some energy trying to get through to the end of the year, and um, there's definitely something has shifted. It doesn't feel so pressure cooker. So I'm feeling like maybe the arrow got shot off into the sky, and now it's sort of like hands off, and we just see what happens.
In the
So
right direction.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Or trusting whatever direction it shoots. That's the best, the best, highest serving. So I'm really excited. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And we are going to be talking about the topic of expansion and how it has, I would say, sort of very knowledge-based, practical and metaphysical kind of connotations or understandings. The concept of expansion is sort of becoming larger or more extensive in ourself. And I think we can expand our mind, we can expand our heart, we can expand our soul, and we can also expand our kind of being, our the being that receives all of the parts of the spirit world, or the sort of the greater power in terms of how we sort of interact and move through the world. So expansion, how does it, when I say that word, like sort of how do you see it fitting into your sort of like knowledge, practical kind of understanding? Start us off there, and then I think we can do our little thing and bounce back and forth.
So I think there's quite a few people who are spiritual out there that are probably watching us, but for those of you who are not spiritual and very common sense orientated, expansion for me is...
Can I just say they don't have to be different? Common sense and spiritual, you can't be, it's not one or the other, right?
No.
The practicality of how they think is different. Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah. So expansion is for me exactly the same as your comfort zone. So you have your comfort zone, you kind of, this is your comfort zone, and in terms of where you are in your comfort zone is going to determine what you do. So let's just say you're at the bottom of your comfort zone, and you've exhausted all options of friends, therapy. You might turn to a psychic, like to get your card or a reading done, to get some direction in life, and then so that might kind of shift your mind or open it a little bit because you've broken through the bottom of the comfort zone to expand it. Well, let's just say you're going up to the top, and you know, as you get to the top of your comfort zone, you're clearly operating from more like powerful emotions that serve you, as opposed to forceful emotions like anger. So let's just say you're operating from integrity and love versus anger. And as you move up, in any spiritual text, what you'll find is that they say that powerful emotions are emotions that are more aligned with love, and you go up the ascension scale in terms of vibration, whereas forceful emotions kind of drag you down. So if you're getting out of your comfort zone on the upper edge, then you're kind of growing your capacity to love, to give, to connect, to be conscious, to connect with all of consciousness. So that's how I would kind of tie the two together.
Yeah. Some of you out there may have heard about Lacey, may have heard of Lacey Phillips. I became a student of hers, understanding her kind of way of thinking, 5 years ago or so. And she talks about like the concept of expansion sort of being almost a funnel. And it's interesting that you drew the sort of same shape, that, if we are able to expand ourselves, and that can come in a couple of different ways, then we have sort of more of a funnel that can receive, and let's say love, because that's really the answer. And that might also be, receive more opportunities, receive more connections, receive more, positive energy, whatever it is that sort of like helps shape your life. So there's something for me that is, how am I expanding myself in my own container, in my own sort of thing? And it's interesting that you bring in comfort zone, because I think if I look back at my journey, I think there's sort of, maybe there's two sides of it. There's like a metaphysical side. You could say, when I see angel numbers or 1111, or I see my birthday 314 all the time, and all of those kind of things. Like I know now that those are expansion moments that sort of, by default, me seeing those and connecting with spirit, it's expanding me from a metaphysical point of view, so I can receive more, so that it reminds me or confirms me that I'm on the right path, I'm on the right track. And I think that can come in from other sort of synchronistic signs and things that we get. So there's sort of like a metaphysical sense of expansion. But I think also, if I look back to when I started, my improv and performing and acting and singing and dancing, like all of that, they were all expansive moments, because it was so uncomfortable in my uncomfort zone. But the exhilaration that I got from sort of doing it and pushing past that comfort zone absolutely expanded my heart into not only being able to
into self-love.
Yes, far out. I was going to say that, like, actually, as I had this really big moment, it was actually to love myself more, like the exhilaration and the pride and the power that I got from showing up for myself And then what that then did, I was able to receive more love, which meant I was able to give more love. So I found that would come in the exchanges that I would have, that would come in the sort of, you know, the smile that I would have it would be simple as that. I'd bump into people in the street and you'd have all these beautiful moments because you're having such an expanded heart that had come through, like really showing up for myself. And then that then bounced back and gave energy back to other people. So yeah, wow.
Mm. It's like when you're in love and you walk around, you have a completely different experience of the world.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? You're just like, oh,
Yeah.
everything's amazing.
Yeah, definitely in expansion. And, you know, love begets more love, and, you know, joy begets more joy. Yeah, that's so interesting. I definitely saw, I think also if we look at it from an educational point of view, or in the journey of learning about myself too, that the more I expanded my knowledge, or the more I expanded my understanding of self, again, the more I was then able to show up and be more, you know, definitely present, definitely more compassionate, definitely more understanding, definitely more open-hearted and open-minded, to be in interactions with others in a way that that I knew was not only expanding and shifting me, but it was also expanding and shifting those people that I was interacting with in those experiences as well.
Mm-hmm. And how did you know that the other people were opening and expanding?
I was just
Like,
thinking,
how does
are you
somebody
like a
know?
psychic or
Yeah.
something right now? Because I literally was thinking that. I was like, how did you know that? And then you ask it. I think because this is a really interesting point. Because I can feel it.
Okay.
I think on two things. One, I think you can often see it by how they react, the way they smile, they interact, they may share something more personal about themselves. And, you know, it doesn't have to get to a personal place, but like they are more open in what they give. You can see also, I feel like as a sentient kind of being, you can see how they then interact with other people. So I can feel that, how they then, you know, it's like when you, I don't know, put Tinkerbell fairy dust on people, like they then spread it, and then you can just sort of see it spreading that energy. So, you know, I think it's a feeling, and I love it.
I was going to say, for those of us that don't have feelings, like, and we're more visual, or we don't see the fairy dust,
yeah. How would you tell that you can see expansion sort of happening?
I think it's almost, I know that there's a significant shift when I see brightness in somebody's face. Like, I think a lot of people would say they feel lighter when they've shifted something, or when they're expanding in like an ascending emotional scale way. And then,
which comes back to sort of vibrations, right? In terms of yeah.
And then the other thing that maybe I've had said to me is, when I think, so when we're human beings, we have thoughts, emotions, and we have a body. And sometimes we're just so in our head that we walk around just thinking that we are physically our thoughts, as opposed to actually being in this body that kind of has external senses. So I think maybe the more expanded you are, the more present you are, which means that you really absorb what's going on around you. And by being present, you can then be grateful, express gratitude, you know, see the abundance in nature. And it continues that cycle of love, gratitude, growth, peace.
Oh my God, I love you so much. I feel like you always blow my mind with like something that I would never have thought of. I mean, and I'm writing this down as like the next point, but because I don't think I would have ever seen it again, of like how something as simple, like if I think about being more present and being more aware, I'm able to know that I have all these feelings and that they don't, like, they aren't me. They are sort of just visitors, maybe is a way to say it, and that they come in and out of our body on a million by million basis. And as I've learned to become more present, Freudian slip of the tongue. Whatever. I laugh at that myself. That you can know that those feelings will go, they will pass. And I think, as we become more present, we can be really cognizant that they are just feelings and that they will come and go, and they are not us. Like, we are separate to our feelings. And I think, with some breathing exercises or being in nature or being around high vibrational other people, we can sort of transmute those feelings into a different state, or letting them pass through us, which we've talked about before. That like, I think allowing feelings, again, maybe even coming back to the funnel, allowing the feelings to sort of go and pass means you're not being blocked up with stuff that isn't serving the higher purpose.
Yeah, and so the feelings will stay around as long as you continue the story behind them. So if you continue the story of, I was hard done by, I'm living in apathy, like if you continue that I'm hard done by story whilst you're feeling the apathy, you will stay there and you won't take action. If you change that story to, I was hard done by, I was wronged, this is not fair, it might build up and lead into anger, and at least anger is going to get you some action. Like, you're going to take some action, hope, maybe in a good way, hopefully. But if you continue to say the same story, you're going to be living in the same emotion. So to just process the emotion, drop the story, and that's the easiest way to, I mean, it's not the easiest way, because to actually do it is quite complex. Well, maybe not. Maybe it could just really be easy for somebody to do it, but I'm going to say that it's a new concept. And when I read that, feel the emotion without the thoughts and the story behind it, I was like, oh, okay. It's a new concept.
Do you have an example of like something that you've been able to kind of work through in that way?
Gosh.
And think about it, and I can jump onto something else if you want to come back.
Yeah, I'll come. Yeah. Oh, well, look, I guess the thing is, it's always like maybe experiencing like upset. So anybody who's dating at the moment, I guess maybe expecting something to go a particular way and experiencing upset and having a story around the upset, as opposed to just feeling the upset and being curious about where maybe in the past the similar situation had happened, and just truly expressing it. It's like there's a difference between experiencing like pure sadness versus sadness with I'm sorry, like I'm lonely, I have no friends, or I have no friends, nobody cares about me, like, the whole drama thing.
Is that why you do
it? No. Can you imagine me on the bed? No. No, that's not me. That's not what I do. But I mean, there are people that do that, right? When you think about,
and whatever you do is fine. Also, just for anyone listening, however your shit turns up, like, I think we're very like equal opportunists, like, of no judgment in terms of like, we all manifest our shit in different ways, and
exactly. But when you can understand it, it means that you can at least start to change the way that you behave. And one of the things that I was talking to somebody about today is that, like, we grow up watching TV, music videos, and that becomes the normal thing that you're exposed to. So 2 to 3 hours of movies, TV series, videos, And that's what you begin to believe, that that is what life is like for everyone. So of course in a movie they're going to over dramatize a situation because they want to pull you in, they want to get you hooked in the emotion, and that's what makes a great movie. But let's just say that's the only thing you've ever experienced, and that's how you think emotions should be processed. Like, you know, I think a movie on consciousness might just be really boring because everyone's going around, you know, showing love, maybe, I don't know. But
the contrast
so, isn't there. Yeah, the contrast isn't there. Yeah, the contrast is not there. Whereas in a movie, like, you've got the dramatic contrast and you've got the over exaggerated characters.
Yeah.
Like in life. And if that's all you're ever exposed to, yeah, I mean, if that's all you're ever exposed to, then know that you will be changed as a person. So let's just say you're somebody who only watches horror movies, crime investigations, etc., etc. Like, I was living with somebody who did that, and then they were like, I can't fall asleep. It's just, I'm just like, okay, because your mind's just tuning over. You're feeding yourself all these like paranoia stories and stuff, and that's not what everyday life is. Everyday life for most people is relatively safe, relatively normal, and we have these things that we've been exposed to, and we just create these stories in our brain that can make it beautiful or can make it really not so good.
Yeah, which is interesting. I mean, I think that leads us to like another side of things of like, if you were to look at your life, you know, go back to the Tony Robbins wheel of life. And, you know, when we did that together years ago, you know, there's a slice for everything in your life, you know, family, love, sex, work, food, diet, whatever you want to put in your wheel. And I think you can look at that from an expander's point of view. If I was to also look at that with the lens of which of these, you know, which and how much of these slithers is expanding me, you know, I think that's something interesting. You know, if you're in a position that you're not eating from a diet perspective, and it's not like you have to be on a diet, but if you're not eating in a way that is feeding and nourishing your body, then you're not necessarily, you know, expanding yourself in a way that you can, you know, maybe handle emotions differently, or, you know, get enough sleep, or be able to be sort of clear in the mind to do your work, or whatever it is. Like, that, you know, diet will affect that. And I think as you look at all the other pieces of that too, some of those, you know, don't lend themselves to being expanding moments or expanding opportunities.
Yeah. And would you say that, you know, so it's 0 in the middle and then 10 on the outside, and 10 is like you really fulfilled in that part of life. Would you say that once every area is 10, does the wheel get bigger?
Yeah, maybe that's the concept of expansion in the greater sense of the funnel getting bigger. Yes. And that you're able to, you know, and I want to be super careful of like, for me, even as I look at my own sort of journey, doesn't mean like, you know, the wheel gets bigger, therefore I can make more money and do more work. I think it's more of a sense of fulfillment in all the areas of myself, and more self-love, more capacity to love, of which then may translate into more work, more jobs, more money, more of everything. You know, I think the concept of more is interesting, as you put it. You know, it's we have a greater capacity. And I think it's interesting too, one of the other areas that I wanted to talk about is like, I think as we think about how expanded we could be or are, I think, you know, sometimes in a work context, and actually even in all types of relationships, I think, you know, there's an element of, if someone isn't as in a place of expansion, and they maybe don't have the capacity to be able to maybe to go where you want to go, or to interact in a way that you would prefer to interact. And I think, you know, I've seen that come up in a few work situations, and even some
personal situations, I imagine, also.
Yeah, definitely. I think of you know, where I've been sort of interacting with someone and maybe they're in a more low vibrational state based on the current circumstances. And again, without judgment of like, because, you know, they have concerns about money or their housing or their, or whatever, that they're sort of almost not in a place to be able to interact in a way, because they don't have the capacity to go beyond where they're at. And I saw that recently in a work context where I was sort of pitching something and talking to somebody, and they were sort of, you know, focused on other things. And it was sort of at the end, they were almost like, okay, great. And we'll do this then. And I'm like, okay, I think you didn't maybe hear any of that in that last sort of 10 minutes. And whilst that's totally fine, but it was more that kind of gave me this feeling that they didn't have the capacity to hear what I was sharing, and it just wasn't the right timing. And, you know, that maybe that comes back to sort of some metaphysical things of like, it wasn't the right timing, wasn't the right person, wasn't the right connection. It was just not meant to be. And that, you know, was fine to sort of move forward from that. Yeah. There's also the concept of expanders. I think, you know, one of the things that Lacey Phillips talks about, and I can definitely see, and I think you are an expander for me, is having people in our lives that help us expand as humans and as, you know, as workers, as friends, as lovers, as partners, as daughters, as family members. And I think, you know, when you and I interact and connect, there's such a level of, you know, interest in your knowledge and your learnings and all of the different things. And I think that, you know, having expanders in our lives that can bring information to us also kind of enables us to open the funnel as well.
I think we both share the same goal, but we just come at it from different ways. And I think that's where the kind of expansion can happen, because there's this pinging and bouncing of ideas that just keeps going up and up. And I think it can be people, it can also be situations, like expanders can be expanding situations. So if you're normally not somebody who would go up and speak to somebody, and you kind of said, okay, you set that intention, and then you were like, okay, well, who do I need to be if I have to go up and speak to someone? I've got to be somebody who's confident and who likes speaking to people. And if you set that intention and go out, and I'm speaking to all the introverts out there, because an extrovert's just like, hey, definitely, yeah, definitely.
Like it's difficult for you to speak to people.
Yeah, like I recharge by myself. People I know, I gravitate towards people that I know. I wouldn't necessarily go up to somebody that I don't know. And then when I do, in the past there was awkwardness, whereas now that, you know, it's kind of like, oh, hey, how are you? Now it's more natural, but in the past definitely there was a lot of thought going behind it. Yeah, but still put me in a room of people that I don't know, and that for me requires like a bit of a mental strategy.
What is that strategy? What does that mean? I love this.
Just in terms of I guess if you put it in a business context, you know, and you were in a room and you had to network, you'd be like, okay, so I would probably naturally tend to gravitate towards somebody who is looking slightly awkward, because then I know that they just feel that they just can't hide the awkwardness.
Yeah.
And then I guess, you know, if you know people who actually can help you with something that you're looking to get into, then naturally going up to them, because I would have a natural conversation. But essentially it would just be somebody within the vicinity, seeing whether or not they're open, and just kind of going, hey, this is my deal, what's yours?
How do you see if they're open? How does that, is that again a feeling for you, or more of like a body language? Or
I think it's it's definitely, I think if you scan a room, you could definitely pick up on body language. I mean, you can tell, you know, if somebody's looking to connect, they're going to be looking around. If somebody doesn't want to connect, they're going to be like looking at their feet or something, or like or on their phone. I think, you know, the phone's great. Everyone's, you know, on their phone the whole time. But yeah, it's more a it is definitely more a scanning process. And you, as the natural extrovert, love connecting with people, how would you?
You know, It's funny you said that, because I was like, I like recharging on my own too. So I was like, am I an introvert or an extrovert? I mean, I think I think I'm so I don't know if delighted is the right word, but I love to learn about people and their plight and their story and their journey, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore for me to be interacting with people um, in that way, you know, or in a sense of like learning and asking questions is kind of fascinating and very enjoyable. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so, you know, I've certainly been in situations where I feel like I've, you know, maybe assessed whether or not it's not even about like I can be bothered or not to talk to anyone, but more of like, you know, like who, yeah, it's interesting. Like I don't know if I have a strategy in it.
Mm.
Like I don't go into a room and sort of assess it. It's more, I think maybe I feel it, or I think there's an element that maybe I view it from an like a sort of standoff perspective and kind of just like see what's happening. Maybe that's my event world to
Mm.
background, where I often come in and
Yeah.
sort of like take a snapshot of like, you know, I had a friend that was a fireman, and he always like said whenever I walked in the room I look at the exits and the toilets, and like kind of makes
Right.
a sort
Okay.
of like, you know, analytical assessment of the space and where everyone is and what's
Okay.
happening, and then um you know, kind of jumps into speaking to people wherever I have walked into places many times where I said, okay, who am I meant to speak to? And I sort of asked, you know, God, the
Oh
universe,
wow. Okay.
whatever, to say like,
Cool. Yeah.
what is the reason why I'm here? Show me who I'm meant to speak to, show me what I'm meant to do. And then, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it sort of has a natural, whoever turns up,
Mm.
I'm guessing that that's what I'm meant to do. So
Mm.
yeah, it's
And I would define that as an expanding moment. Like that to me
yeah,
sounds
you
rather
will be
expanding.
like, like freaking out. That's amazing. What other expanding moments could you say? Like, what have, as you've gone through this journey and like you've, you know, or where did you see things turn up in work that you've now been able to look at it differently once you've sort of got educated about some of this stuff from a different perspective?
I think an expanding moment for me was I was sitting in my office and I had a director come in, and it was right when TED Talks had taken off, and he was like, I think you'd really like this. Like, and he just gave it to me and he's like, just watch some stuff. And I was like, okay. So that for me was like a real expanding moment. It was,
Mm,
here's my mind, here's my view of the world. And that was literally, I love it when it feels like somebody's just literally jammed your brain and the cogs
mm-hmm.
have just kind of all fallen apart and they need to be pulled back together.
Mm,
That for me is like big,
mm,
you know, big expansion because you get to, I guess, put everything back together in a different way and in a
mm-hmm,
way that's
mm-hmm,
more constructive
mm-hmm,
um, and when I say elevated, I mean in terms of emotions. Like we
mm-hmm,
talk about ascension. There was something that you mentioned, like high vibe or something, and it'd be like,
mm-hmm,
well, how does somebody know if somebody's high vibe? And I guess that only really comes down to what emotion are you feeling
mm-hmm,
on average the whole time.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And as life happens, you may get deviations from that emotion, but how quickly do you go back to that
mm-hmm,
emotion? So let's just say you're always in love, and then you know you might get like some bad news and you experience sadness and grief,
mm-hmm,
but you can view life as a process, compassion, and you can go through that through the grief cycle
mm-hmm,
in a quicker manner and return back to love than somebody who, example, mourns a death for 7 or 10 years.
mm-hmm.
Um, like I would say that that is what ascension is, or that's what a high vibe
Mm,
is.
mm. You know, what I love about these conversations is I think that we're also we're bringing in so many different like terms and subjects
Yeah.
and concepts and people that have done things, you know, different other, you know, masters out there in their field. But as I listen to, you know, this concept of high vibration, ascension, consciousness, awareness.
Yeah.
you know, love energy.
Yeah.
It's all the same stuff. I think that's what's really amazing. And I love I love myself. I was about to say, I love myself. I love what I love about myself and my journey is also
Yeah.
what I've loved about my journey is like I've learned from all different people, you know, and
Yeah.
I've taken a little piece from his. But if you actually like take off Tony Robbins' outfit and, you know, Gabby Bernstein and like everybody's saying the same things, but just in different outfits. And it's really, it's really amazing, as, you know, like there's kind of, like it's kind of amusing to me that like almost, you know, God has, you know, invented us all. We've all been birthed from something, you know, this bigger sort of creation. And we, you know, we're all working really hard to be our unique self, which is kind of, you know, what the life journey of being a human is to some degree. And, you know, some of us come to that understanding of like, we really were made as an individual. Like there's nothing, like as much as we're similar, there's like just even twins, they're not even the same. Like it's just, you know, fascinating to me that we are all literally so uniquely different and built. And that was done as purpose, on purpose, you know. And then we spend our life's work trying to find that and find what we love and what we're good at and what we enjoy and go towards that. And then the uniqueness of that itself. And then there's sort of element that at the end of the day, that any sort of teaching of spiritual, metaphysical, self-help, growth, even just sort of basic school elements to some degree, is about like the same concepts, but just dressed up in different outfits and different, you know, logos and different looks and feels. Like, I think it's funny. Because it go
Yeah, no, there's definitely like, and I'm going to like use maybe the five senses. So let's just say you're more visually dominant and you're always using the words I see. You're going to process somebody who uses a lot of visuals in their work and in their presentation to explain things much easier than somebody who hears. Like if you speak to any like musician, DJ, and you have these types of conversations, like they're going to respond better to a voice note on WhatsApp. Like if you really want to like get them on board, they're always going to respond better to a voice note in WhatsApp because, and they're always going to say, I hear you. They're not going to say, I see you, I feel you. So when you look at like all the different ways, like if you look at the five senses and you look at the way that everyone learns in a unique way, everyone has a different language that they're familiar with, and they process and understand concepts in a different pace. So some people could hear something once or twice and they just get it. Sometimes you might need to hear the same thing 20 times through three different people, and then it lands with you. So I think the beauty of it is that essentially it's the same message being delivered in vastly different ways, in different styles as well, with different personalities. Because, you know, I know that Tony Robbins can be quite a polarizing character if you're not American and if you're not used to the whole loud, dynamic presentation, but he does it, one, because that's his personality, and two, he knows that to make a big change, you've got to like radically shake somebody up so that you kind of challenge their mental thinking and their frameworks and their beliefs. And then you've got Gabby Bernstein, right? And you've got, you know, the PR, the cool chick. Like people are going to resonate with her. Like there's a whole bunch of people on Instagram that I'm sure that, you know, resonate with her. So it's kind of, everyone resonates with different things, and you'll be open to the message when you resonate with them.
Yes. Yeah. Again, it comes back to vibration. Like if they're saying it from a place that sort of matches somewhere in you, then, you know, that's where you can pick up that sort of understanding and translate that into your own language. Yeah. It's really interesting. I think that I think as I look at the world of manifestation too, you know, being able to expand yourself more to receive more is, it for me plays into the concept of manifestation. You know, my abilities to manifest are connected to my abilities to receive, my ability to be open to receiving.
Rate yourself out of 10 in your ability to receive, with 10 being you're an amazing receiver.
I love that you're laughing and I'm taking this really seriously.
No, it's a serious question. It's a serious question.
I think, I think it's a beautiful topic, because I've been reading a little bit lately in a few different places of, like, you know, on one level, my personal level of manifestation is like a 10 in terms of like small things, like, you know, phone calls, people, needs, you know, sort of different things. And then in some other areas, it's been, you know, interestingly, you could almost say it's been more challenging, or it's been less frequent,
consistent,
or
less,
that too, or, you know, speedy or something, you know, whatever the words are. But what I was reading lately is actually like some of this other stuff, the bigger stuff, let's say, is taking its time, because that's the time that it's meant to come. And I think, you know, the hugest learning and expansiveness, or expansion from my own self, is that I feel like I have this timeline of when everything's meant to be and what I need it to be. But I know that, like, I had to go through all of that stuff in order to be in the place that I'm expanded to receive it.
Yeah.
And, you know, while that may seem kind of obvious, it was kind of a huge, like, realization of I wasn't ready for all of those things that I was asking for. So,
so how much self-love did you need to grow to be able to receive what it is that you wanted to receive? And self-worth. Yeah, self-love and self-worth.
Yeah, great question. What I was also going to say, which I think kind of ties into that, like what I've also come, which is maybe the self-love, like I am not a bad person or manifesting badly or not manifesting correctly, because I think we also kind of, when we try and manifest something, or even as we go through our spiritual development and journey, we're like, okay, well, I must be blocked. I'm doing this wrong. Well, actually, maybe you're not doing anything wrong. Maybe this is exactly where it needs to be. And part of the actual the lesson is the self-love around you're not doing anything wrong. That your lesson is, this is the timing that this is happening. And I think for me, there's been a lot of the times when I feel sort of contrast, or maybe even like I'm not getting what I want when I want it, or I feel like, you know, I'm uncomfortable in some situation. Actually, the old belief is to go to the place of like, I am doing something wrong and I am blocking it and it is my fault and I need to do something better, or I need to change something about myself, or I'm just not doing enough work, or whatever. And like, that's, for me, has been the huge thing. You know, maybe there's elements of that. I mean, I think, you know, vibrationally in yourself when you're not doing the work in the real sense, but otherwise, like, actually it's got nothing to do with you, and it's part of a bigger, you know, like, you know, the smaller things come in quick because they're just like all the little shuffles, but these bigger things, the timing of that, it's not you. And if we look back at like,
can I give you can I give you an example? So like where you are today is essentially, if you talk about manifesting being thoughts, feelings, and actions, everyone has manifested their life where they are today.
Yes.
Like, and that's something that I came across, like with theta. They're like, everyone's manifesting. It's either what you want or it's either what you don't want, and you just don't know, but you're not paying enough attention to kind of what it is. And let's just say you're tracking along really, really well. And I can give you a perfect example, because as you were talking, I was like, I've got to share this. So for the last 2 weeks, I've kind of been a bit off. Normally I'm pretty good. But then I'm like a little bit off. So in my off stage, like I got my car cleaned, and then the window tinting got scratched, which has never happened in the entire time that, you know, I've had my car. and then I get a parking fine. And I'm like, okay, I've got to, like, do you know what I mean? So that is, here's my crappy mood. And here's what it's doing in my outside life, kind of going, you might want to change the way that you're thinking, focusing to get something different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think some of those things are more immediate, and some of those things are on a longer time scale, which kind of goes, I think if we look back, like we were manifesting this life back in London, you kind of go in stages, I think, and some of these bigger things, a partner or a job change or career things, I think sometimes we feel like these things are, need to be instant, and we want them because we fucking want them, that's fair. Like I want to share my life with someone, and I keep saying, where is he, and what am I not doing to bring him in? But maybe part of this final stage of things is actually to be less about what am I not doing to allow that to happen, and actually just loving exactly where I am, and this is what I'm meant to be doing, and everything that has led this moment is what's bringing that about. And as you mentioned, like I now have more awareness around certain things that is going to then affect my future as I'm kind of going through the stage of like daily living with the layer of manifestation. I look back to London, I certainly wasn't aware of my thoughts and behaviors and how I treated myself and how I valued myself or didn't value myself. And so therefore my level of manifestation was I don't know, hampered or impacted because I wasn't necessarily in a state that I was even ready to receive that. And as I look at the lessons, I had to go through what I went through in my past relationship and all of that. Like it was, you could say I got so many parking tickets to the point I got hit upside the head. Like it had to happen in such a big way to knock me to my ground to start again. And I think, I don't know if I would have made some of those changes around my personal life and the way I was in relationships and the way I didn't value myself and the way I allowed myself to be treated, because I didn't have any self-worth myself. So if you look
can I maybe add, maybe just a reframe? Maybe it's just that
I love it.
You didn't know how to receive love. So therefore you always felt like you had to give it, and you thought that that's what you had to do to get it.
Yes.
And you didn't realize, that you had to be a different way to be able to receive it.
Yeah. And I would say that's because I didn't give it to myself. I mean, everything comes back to love for self first. And I think you're absolutely right. Like I was so caught on what I believed or what I understood on how I needed to give love. And for me, that was mixed up in money, that was mixed up in, control, that was mixed up in, sex and giving myself away physically, emotionally, financially, all of those things. But because I wasn't giving any of that to myself, I felt like that the only way to be filled or expanded, maybe, if we could extrapolate that, was to actually give that to others, but not in a place where I was even ready to receive it for myself, because I didn't know how to give it to myself. I didn't even know that that was a thing. Like it's that literal, I didn't even know that you like part of this journey, in order to sort of receive true high vibrational love and high vibrational experiences, you have to love yourself. And maybe that's a blanket statement that
in a humble I just want to add, in a humble way and not an egoic way, like in a true way, as opposed to walking around like, I love myself and being egotistical about it, because that's not what we're talking about.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I think it became, for me, self-love became like, how am I nurturing myself? How am I feeding myself? How am I resting my human body? How am I, showing up for myself? How am I speaking to myself? It was all of that versus like, I'm, gorgeous, fun, happy, cool person to be with. To be honest, like all of that got stripped in such a way that it became more about how I was treating myself. Like, I'll be very honest, it was as if I had a relationship with myself. That's really what my kind of breakthrough brought down. I was like, I'm spent so much time and energy and money putting into my other relationships. What about investing in a relationship with myself? What does that look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how
Because
can I?
we never, yeah. Sorry. Like we never really get, we never really get told about the relationship with ourselves. Like
No.
I think maybe the first thing that maybe I kind of came across was the story of the two wolves. It's like the bad wolf or the good wolf. And it's like, well, which one's going to grow the most? And it's like, well, whichever one you feed. And I would, yeah, I'd say that that's something that maybe quite a few people had heard. But that's still kind of like, it's not really talking about the relationship with yourself. It's talking about, you know, the battle of good and evil. And maybe if we can move away from this battle of good and evil and right and wrong, and move more towards you know, imagine everything you said to yourself was being said by an external person. Like, what would you be saying? Or if you don't say it to somebody else, then don't say it to yourself. That's something that maybe we need to reframe how we engage with ourselves.
Yeah. I think this is again why these conversations and the concept of this, you know, expansion, consciousness, ascension, all these words is like just as simple as something of like, you know, how are you feeding yourself, and how would you speak to yourself in that same way? Like, you know, these are just such profoundly simple yet massive thought processes that, you know, I genuinely, you know, I'd never even heard of, you know, and never even thought about it. Nobody ever brought any of this stuff up to me in school. You know, I think even, you know, hilariously, as I got onto like Instagram 5 years ago, then you'd see all the sort of memes and the little sayings and things. But even as I was reading them, like I still didn't really get it. And I think,
So, what made you understand it? When did you know that you understood it? Because you can read self-help book after self-help book after self-help book, and like, and you can become that eternal learner. Like, I think there's this thing in society where everybody wants the quickest, the next best thing, and that leads to this, like, how many books have you read on habits, and what are they really kind of saying differently to what they said 5 years ago?
right.
But there's this, you know, it's like, you know, this is the latest must-have best habit book to kind of change things. And you're like, okay, it's just the same thing, slightly differently presented, maybe one or two more modern concepts, but nothing's really radically changed. So how is it that, you know, maybe we as society are just not getting it? It's like, what do we need to do to get it? Do we need to slow down? Like, how did you start getting it and understanding it in your body, as opposed to it just being a conceptual thing of, it must be me, I'm doing something wrong, I'm not learning enough to understand it?
I mean, I think it's the physicality in my body, and, you know, the sort of when it almost like emotionally, financially cut me or reduced me. I think, you know, I didn't learn that I needed to nourish my body until I lost my periods and I had not enough body fat to cope. And that was tied into my my self-worth and my self-value, in a sense that I felt like if I looked fitter and better, and, you know, like I definitely don't think I was conscious of these thoughts until, again, older narrator coming in. But like the wake up call was when, you know, I go do the tests and wonder why I don't have my periods, and then I look at, you know, the physicality of the numbers, and that was the wake up call, and that was how I learned it. And then I was like, oh shit, so like I have to do that for myself. Oh, you know, and like I said, it was tied into some other things too, around thinking that if I looked a certain way, or if my body looked a certain way, that I would be loved more by a certain person, because that would like make them love me more, you know, which I think as humans, we have a lot of body stories.
Yeah, definitely.
how we, you know, think our body looks and what we think we need to do to it to make someone love us, you know, to this, that, and the other. So that mine was very much tied up in that. I think.
And what do you know now to be different?
What I know now, that like, if there is no me, there's no nothing. There's no baby, there's no business, there's no, you know, there's no painting, there's no nothing. Like, if I don't look after me and my body and my mind and my heart and my soul, then all of these dreams of meeting someone, having a family, you know, painting, doing the work around the world, like all of that is pointless, because if there's no me, there's nobody, there's nothing if this happens. And so, but it took me losing all of those things in order to understand that. And you know, that I think came from losing all my money, losing, you know, all of the my sort of maybe social constructs of what I thought my my place in the business world needed to look like, you know, when that was confronted, when I think I lost the relationship that I thought stood for everything, or was this sign of status, or this sign of that I'd made it, or I was doing it, or whatever. And I think until I lost all of those things bit by bit, and again, talking about like getting parking tickets every week, I mean, these things started happening to me in a great way over the course of like a couple of years, but I wasn't paying attention because I was sort of so stuck in this, you know, this sort of lack place, or this, you know, misunderstanding that that I had any worth or any value, you know, which again, there was sort of like two sides of the things until I worked out the value and the self-worth. I couldn't even see that these things were conflicting me. And then until I lost everything there, I couldn't see that I needed that to kind of, so I was in this, you know, wish-wash of a washing machine kind of, and until I sort of really kind of hit rock bottom, none of those things made sense. And then bit by bit, I could then like go look at each of these areas of my life, going back again to the Tony Robbins wheel of like, you know, health, diet, relationships, work, to see, okay, how am I showing up in each of those? What can I do to be different? How can I love myself first and foremost as part of that process, and then apply myself to those situations? You know, if your cup is empty, then you've got no way to give to anyone else. And I think until my cup got empty, I didn't work it out.
Yeah, and I guess the expansion piece is about making the cup bigger to be able to kind of receive and give and kind of overflow.
Yes, I think that concept of like, until we maybe learn, you know, and I'm very conscious of like sharing some of these as we kind of you know, summarize for everybody out there today. You know, I'm very conscious, like, these are our ways that we went about it in very different ways. You know, these are not the only ways. And I think that, you know, until I learned that in order, like, I have to operate from a filled cup of my own, and what that looks like. And, you know, so that was from, you know, expanding my own personal knowledge and understanding of the world, you know, sort of, you know, spiritual elements, you know, as well as like meeting and learning other people from around the world, so that I could expand my sort of heart and mind. You know, that then came from sort of understanding more on a metaphysical point of view, and how I could, you know, engage more with spirit to fill my own cup, to sort of maybe tune into the, you could say, the infinite knowledge of the universe, to sort of aid and support me on my journey, as well as to give me guidance and support and kind of things like that. And then, you know, finding expanders, people in my life that I could interact with, that would help me expand myself. And then I like what you said about Tony Robbins in terms of like inspired action, to, you know, taking action. Like, it took me doing improv and other sort of like extreme comfort zone situations that then pushed me out of that sort of place to expand myself from that. So until I did all of those things, you know, in some shape or form, that expanded my cup, of which then now my cup is full. I know that it can expand greater, and I can give back to other people rather than be giving from my own will.
Yeah. So my observation from what you've said is that you expanded when you put yourself into new situations that were passions of yours that maybe you hadn't done before. And I think when we talk about expanding and we talk about, it's the metaphysical woo-woo affirmation type world. I heard a great analogy last week. It was like, if you buy the treadmill and you don't walk on it, you're not going to get the weight lost. And that's like affirmations. You can be saying affirmations until you really, really want to. If you don't get out, if you don't walk the talk of the affirmation, you're not gonna expand. So that was kind of like, I love that analogy.
Yeah. And I think, whether it's whether it's a spiritual practice or a, metaphysical practice or physical practice, like, unless you practice, you can't embody and sort of like engage in or allow those to become part of you, that you will then operate from that way. And I mean, that's sort of just like, that's not Toni and Helen making that shit up. That's like a way of the world. That's like a universal law that, like, has been around for squillions of years. And I think we're two very curious and interactive people in sort of like kind of exposing ourselves to all types of practices to learn, and I think that is really where it comes from. If you do something on a regular basis, you'll get results. It's as simple as that. And I think that ties up kind of beautifully for me, that like some of these bigger manifestations that I've been working on, like they have been working for years, and that they're not, the timing is not ready. So by doing all the other practices, we're kind of also building the foundations for all the pieces, the cogs in the wheel, to kind of go back into place, and then to sort of jump you into that next stage of life, or that next sort of realization of something as well.
Yeah, I think my biggest tip for expansion would be is to stay curious and always do things that you're not familiar with. And I think that's where the growth will happen.
Yes. And that growth, I think that growth or expansion that you get from that may then flow over into other things. Most likely will, because I think, just because I certainly know, just because I turn up to improv and did a whole bunch of things doesn't mean I'm going to be an improv champion or an improv whatever, but it expanded me in other ways. It gave me more
emotional mastery, I'd say.
Yes. And self-love and ability to come back to sort of the core things that I think then allow me to sort of interact in all the different sort of fields that I'm in. It gave me more trust in my vessel, more trust in the faith of like what came out of my mouth, like not giving a shit. Like it gave me many tools that then expanded me to then show up differently in other areas, which then has made me, I think, it's if we had like X-ray eyes, we could see how interconnected everything was. Because as I'm saying this, it's like, being more trusting of my vessel and what comes out of my mouth, and being able to sort of stand up in front of people and do it. It also has made me more clear in asking for what I need and what I want. And to tie that back, that also ties in for me into the bigger manifestation of a partner or sort of a career path or different things, because I'm having more confidence. And I try not to use the word confidence, because I think we've talked about that. For me, confidence and trust is this inverse relationship. Confidence, you need it at first, but once you trust yourself, you don't need as much confidence. But so this trust, or this, self-love, or this respect, or this just agency to ask for what I want and get clear on what that looks like. And I think that is part of the manifestation process too.
Do you think you had to get clear on what you wanted first to be able to ask for it?
Yes.
Yeah, because you could have asked for something and you got something, and then you're like, actually, I need to get really, really clear.
Yes. Well, and I think that's a beautiful thing about manifestation. You know, if I think about like the, you know, the partner or whatever, I mean, you could say, you know, I want a guy that does this, and he turns up and you're like, oh shit, I have to get a bit more detailed. Okay, I want a guy that does this and this, or
Yeah,
not
yeah,
this. And I think, you know,
yeah,
we both, everybody's got examples of the people that have turned up that you're like, okay, that wasn't quite what I was thinking. You know, I guess I have to be really clear, you know, and then, you know, you refine it. So I think through the trial and error, through, you know, curiosity, through humor,
yeah.
you can be like, oh, okay. And, you know, and I think universe, God, whoever, has a pretty funny sense of humor, the things that he sends us to test us. Also, you know, are we paying attention? Are we
Mm-hmm.
standing up for ourselves? Are we,
Mm-hmm.
you know, are we in a state of agency that we can actually be like, no, that's not what I want, and I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
accept second best. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
so layered and
Mm-hmm.
intricate. And I, you know, I see if we closed our eyes and became X-ray, we'd have like, there's like green alien
Mm-hmm.
lines shooting everywhere. You know, it's all sort
Mm-hmm.
of connected. And I think until we sort of maybe, I don't want to say, because I think something, you know, like we touched on before, I don't want to say because I'm not doing this, this is why I'm not
Mm-hmm.
getting that, because I think, you know, often again that comes back to a state of lack. But I do think there's this you know, it's just a trust on a deeper level that, you know, like every moment is expanding us to move us forward. And when we're, maybe it's truth,
Mm-hmm.
because I think if we are exquisitely truthful with ourselves in every possible way,
Mm-hmm.
then I think that is what clears the path for all manifestations to come true. And our, you know, because if we're
Mm-hmm.
the only blocking, you know, we kind of do to some degree is when we're not honest with like
Yeah.
what we're doing.
So So there's this spiraling concept of expansion. So it kind of continues to go up. So let's just say you've got the same, let's just say obstacle or thing to learn. You're going to be circling like this. And if you continue to respond to it the same way, you're just going to continue to stay like this. So you're going to get the same situation, but once you change how you deal with it, it's going to go around like this, right? So you're going to go up, but you're still going to start to plateau at the next level up, and you're going to hit the similar situation. But the way that you respond to it will either be the same and you continue to circle around, so you're going to actually expand again and again and again. And I just like, I love the analogy of it being like an upward spiral, because it shows that it is dynamic and that there is movement. And the way that you respond and the way that you interact. So let's just say, you know, you did call, let's just say there was a man present or a situation present that you manifested. You could either choose to engage with it or you could just block it. And if you blocked it, then you're not, I mean, then maybe you're not necessarily getting the lesson of that interaction. But if you engage with it in an ascended way, which is with an open heart and with respect for the other person, and, you know, in a truthful, like non-violent communication way, being able to go, here's what I need, and here's how I need it, and here's what I've seen you give me, and this is why, and it's showing respect to both people, then you know that you can actually walk away in a manner that will get you something different the next time, as opposed to just blocking it, because it means that you're being truthful with yourself. You're identifying what your needs are and how you want them actually met, which then helps you get clearer in terms of
on the next step.
On the next step.
That's amazing. I mean, it's kind of, I think I've mentioned this before, it's like snakes and ladders, or, you know, this kind of Mario Brothers game that we're sort of like, you know, until we go up, you know, it's going to keep coming around. And I think that's why I feel like, you know, anyone that's in this journey of like manifesting and understanding what manifesting is, and also just sort of engaging with the practice of it, like it is, you know, it's a spiral, and there's many things in that sort of like turn and twist that needs to be in the right place, because also, you know, you might be going around, like might just not be the right timing, so that might be something completely not in your control, which nothing is anyway, you know, and it might be just, maybe part of the learning is actually how you react to that not being the one or the situation that you want, you know, the expectations that you're like, oh, this is it, and you're like, well, no, it's not. So actually the learning there is not like...
I think if you got rid of the whole concept of this is it and just go, actually, I'm just getting to know you. Like, I just think both men and women could just go, okay, I'm getting to know you. I'm getting to know you a little bit more. I like this. I don't like this.
Yeah.
Are you willing to change? Yes, no. But there's got to be a certain level of respect at that point for you to want to get into those levels of conversations, as opposed to, you know, some people just want that short engagement of a one night. And as long as you can respectfully kind of go, look, this is where I'm at and this is what I want, you can have a one night, you know, interaction, and it can be respectful and both people can get what it is that they want out of it. However, you know, a lot of people, well, I would say, have a lot of alcohol, don't know what they're doing, and force themselves into situations that they're not necessarily pleased with themselves the next day. And it's like, where's that on the vibration funnel opening kind of scale? Like, I find that, you know, people who have gone up that more spiritual path or who live from love and an open heart are kind of, you know, they're aware that there's something around sexual energy that is very precious and sacred, and, you know, who do you want to be sharing it with?
Yeah. I mean,
and what are you going to be taking on from the other person, right? So if you take on everything from the other person, you want to make sure that that person is like completely on your level, completely like...
Yes. Yeah, I think I saw a Ram Dass thing years and years ago, that's about like sexual energy being the highest vibration, and how he came across many people in his lifetime that he could have had sex with. We were so, you know, but he chose not to because it wouldn't have served the greater purpose in doing that, you know, whether or not he was married or in a relationship or whatever it was. And I had, it's interesting because as I think about like maybe the tests that come through too with manifestation and sort of like tuning us to our kind of greater purpose, you know, just in terms of being a human and being honest with ourselves and loving ourselves and all the things. I bumped into someone the other day that I've seen around, and it was one of those moments, like there was definitely a sort of an energy between the two of us, but I basically was very forthright and blunt and just said, you know, there is no, like, you and I being intimate is not serving the greater purpose. Like, I know what I want. I'm looking for a sacred union partner. I'm looking for, you know, a man that's in these situations, and I know enough of you that we're not in the same place, and therefore being intimate would not serve anything other than sort of a brief gratification, which I'm not willing to do. You know, for me, I'm very much feel that I'm keeping that for the next time that I feel like it is, you know, aligned. And that on one hand took courage to say that, and on the other hand, you know, it wasn't that deep, but it was very very
did they get
empowering. No, afterwards he said, so that's a no. And I was like, yep, that's a no. And a couple of times I think he still said, so just double checking, that's definitely a no. And I'm like, yep, that's definitely a no. And I was like, cool, so it's good. I mean, that just to me confirmed exactly what I was thinking from the first place. Like, it was, you know, happened, bless him. But
persistence, it's a good quality. It's a great quality.
I mean, I'm not going to say that I haven't tried that before either, so I can't, I'm no judgment here, but I think, you know, there is that element too of being really truthful as you go through that journey to sort of like, was that an expanding moment for me? That was hugely expanding, on a sense that, you know, that enabled me to ask for what I want and to speak about it. It also enabled me to say what I don't want, and to stand in, like, there was, I think, even an element of actually of being seen or being
understood.
like kind of you know, like having the courage to say that with no kind of concerns. I don't even know if concerns is the right word, but nothing, like whatever his response was irrelevant. Like, you know, not irrelevant, that's not the right word. I knew whatever his response couldn't affect me or wasn't going to affect me, because I was so, you know, comfortable in like, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to ask for. And, you know, however he reacted was fine. You know what I mean? And I think, you know, not being, I guess where I'm going with that is like, there was many things that I said throughout my journey that I was too scared to say because of how they would react.
Okay.
And so from this, like, it wasn't like it's not that I didn't care how he reacted, but like, I was just like, whatever you do is not going to affect me because I'm so connected to myself in this moment. This is the truth. This is my only aligned path. And I think, you know, that's in expansion is like, you know, what is true for you and what do you know inside of you and how do you stay aligned with that. And every time you do, it's kind of almost like you get shot up the thing and you get shot up the next level and then you kind of get another test and then you work through that.
and would you say that, and would you say that with the self-love, you found it easier to express boundaries?
Yes. I mean, I think if we go back to the tests of my time, I didn't really know what boundaries were. And I didn't actually know that I had a right or
So you didn't have a right to express your boundaries?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even know that there were things called boundaries, as in like that was a thing that I could do, let alone I had a right to do them, let alone I could choose which one, left, right. I mean, nothing. I mean, I was like extreme boundaryless, and that was you know, they were big learnings of definitely. And so they've now come into different places of being able to say, you know, something like, I don't feel like doing like that and I'm not going to do it, or this is what I want and this is how I choose to engage with you, or you know, I'm not going to give myself in that way or whatever. So it's kind of come in different ways like that. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It is. And that's how you grow. I guess putting boundaries in place is a great way to grow.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I think that shoots you up the expansion spiral for sure. Amazing. What a great conversation. We covered a lot of ground. I feel like we were all over the place. But I think this is again the beauty of like these conversations and this concept. Like, awareness is expansion. Expansion is awareness, consciousness. You know, like, it's all the same stuff. We just kind of like, it's got a different outfit on and a different look, and we can look at all these things about ourselves and say, you know, what am I looking for? I'm looking for, you know, truth and love and connection and honesty and
are you living from those places as well?
Yes. And how am I walking the talk? And I think, because I think, and maybe this is a good place to sort of leave it, but, you know, I think that truly has to come from yourself and you within the relationship with yourself first. So like, how am I walking the walk, talking the talk with myself? Because if I'm not doing that within myself, like, to be honest, all of these other relationships and everything are kind of like, they got no chance, you know. And I'll never be one to say that if you don't solve all these things, then you're like, you know, stuffed in relationships, you're never going to get a job, you're never going to be able to manifest. That's not what I'm saying, because we know that we are like work in progress beings, but there is something about truth and how it can heal and connect us and allow us to sort of expand and grow so that we can receive more love and do more cool stuff.
Great.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, everyone, for coming, and thank you for being here, Helen. I love this stuff. It's you are an absolute expander in my life, who continues to present me with truth and honesty and also just other perspectives. I think, you know, that is something about expansion too, of like, when we see it from a different perspective, we can, you know, open our minds and our hearts to know that there's not just only one way. There's a squillion, you know, unlimited amount of ways to do things and to be, and through exposing ourselves to all of those, we then, you know, learn how to grow and be a, you know, more open, loving, expansive human, which is sort of what we're all here to do, I believe.
Yeah, it goes both ways. Yeah, there's many ways to do things. It's just do it in the way that resonates with you, and that is the way for you. Like,
Yes.
just focus on you, what feels right for you, and follow that.
Yeah. How do you know it's right for you?
You know it's right for you when you see the results and you're not comparing yourself to another person saying, oh, they're doing it this way. Like, this is the way that I'm doing it. And there's no judgment, or there's no closing of the heart when you kind of feel that.
I mean, this, we definitely need to like put a pause on this and go for another time so we can speak for hours. But like, you're speaking from a very like aware and like advanced place to some degree, because like, and maybe not like without sort of making that like too deep in a sense, because I still have judgment and all of those things. Like, I think, I don't even know if it's like so encompassing that, like, you know, is it like, is it a feeling? Is it a knowing? Like, and as we tune in and learn about our intuition, we're sort of like fine tuning, like, is this fear, or is this me being scared of going for something I really want because that's what I meant to go? Like, it's such a fascinating concept, because like, how do you really, really know? I think like
I think
like
sometimes, sometimes I find that, okay, a situation will happen, and then there'll be like the dialogue of the mind and the story that goes on. And then afterwards, I might be, hanging up a piece of clothing that I wore, and I'll be in the moment, and then a thought might come in, and it might be, actually, have you thought of this as the alternative? And I'm finding in those moments of stillness. So in this world where we, watch YouTube videos or something when we're eating our dinner, when we're like so multi-focused and multitasking all the time, to actually just slow down. And, I mean, if you boil the water in the kettle, to actually kind of go, okay, I'm going to listen to the sound of the water coming out of the water tank or the water bottle going into it, like really, really hear it and be present. Just have more of those moments through the day. And then I think that's where it's like, and then maybe another thing to kind of notice is whether or not, is that how I would typically respond? So, I've always been labeled as dismissive avoidant in relationships. And I'm like, okay, am I doing that again? Is that the behavior I'm doing again? And for me, it takes time to process a situation, to be able to articulate boundaries. Like, that's just me. And anyone who knows me will know that I just kind of drop off and then I come back. And they just accept that. So thank you, friends. But when somebody doesn't know you and you do that, and they're just like, what the hell just happened there? It's quite a interesting kind of journey to go on, even of just being self-aware that you do that. But I've been called out on it a couple of times, so so that helps.
I think people calling you shit, but I think what you just said about like it's a practice. Everything is a practice, and that practice of giving yourself actually the permission to have stillness, that practice of finding places to allow the tuning of your intuition, the tuning of your understanding of your own self, your own vessel, so that you can then, navigate through the world and be more in like, oh, this is that feeling again. Okay, I know that's related to that. Oh, this is this. Oh, that feels different. What is that related to? Oh, it could be this, this, and this. It's everything is a practice. And I think we don't ever there's no class in school that says, okay, today kids, we're going to practice like tuning into our intuition and learning, when I feel this feeling, what am I feeling? It's really interesting. It's all very knowledge based and doesn't come from a sense of feeling and emotion and things like that. So noticing those.
Just one more tip before we go. It just sprang to my mind. It was about truly surrendering the situation. Like when you're truly in your head and you're like, okay, I've made my mind up to kind of go, actually, I hand this over. I truly surrender. Like, show me what the best thing is, or show me what the true meaning is. and then being open to it. I think that surrender this year for me has been all about surrender. It's been about, you know, doing the surrender yoga pose, holding myself there, because it just really makes you surrender everything, and let out all those emotions. But surrender is like a great word, and it's a great practice.
Yeah. I mean, I think very layered practice. Like, what does it even bloody mean? You know, I feel like, you know, part of this journey is like, you know, we talk about shit and then we're like, okay, but what does that really mean?
Yeah, like, how do you actually do it? It's not just a word or a concept. What does that
look like? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that like, you know, that's me. Go.
Yeah. So surrendering, you know, let's just say you've got years of unexpressed words, emotions, that, and, you know, that's stored in your body. So the body stores emotions that are not expressed. Like, that is a real thing. And there are studies that are being done to show that yoga actually helps you release these emotions and these traumas that you, pardon me, as an adult right now are not able to verbally express, because you're so disassociated from you're so mental that you're disassociated from your emotions, your feelings, and your body, that literally yoga pose, which is like the 8-limb pose, you kind of on your knees and on your palms and on your chest. And that's the pose. Literally hold that for a good 20 breaths and you will just expel emotion. It will just come out.
That's me in like 2 minutes time.
Literally, I think I did that like every day for like 10 days or something. And I was just dumbfounded at how like even if in your yoga practice, just do whatever you do and then just make an extra point to hold that pose for like 5 times longer than any other pose, and repeat it and just see what comes up. And just let it come up. And the beauty of it is, because you don't know what's causing the emotion, you're just feeling the emotion, which is what we were talking about earlier. The emotion's just there without the story, and it's just purely the emotion that's coming up. So it is true healing and relief. Yeah.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah. It's been a great year.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Thank you to everybody that came today. And we really appreciate you, and we send you love, and we send you expansion, and we send you awareness, and anything that you need to sort of raise your consciousness to go up the spiral, so that we can all have a blast in this human life that we're all in.
Exactly.
All right. Lots of love.
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.